The Cincinnati Bengals travel on the road to take on the Tennessee Titans. This game is going to be played this Saturday on CBS with a 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tennessee, as of right now, going into this matchup, is a 3.5-point favorite for this game. The Bengals got their first playoff win in 31 years against the Las Vegas Raiders last week in the Wildcard Round, defeating them 26-19. And that was a big win, not only for the Cincinnati franchise, but for the city of Cincinnati. Because you got to remember, like, a lot of us weren't around the last time we witnessed Cincinnati win a playoff game. So that was a really amazing accomplishment. And now they're on to an even bigger test, taking on the Tennessee Titans. And when you look at the Tennessee Titans, man, like, we know who's coming back. The King, Derrick Henry. And before Derrick Henry went down, Tennessee was one of the best teams in the NFL. I believe they were 6-1 before his injury. And when you look at this Tennessee team, man, like, we know what their identity is, okay? This is a smash-mouth physical football team. Tennessee is a team that likes to dominate you physically in the fourth quarter, okay? Like, they're like boxers. They'll throw some body blows, they'll throw some jabs, they'll target a certain area and they'll wear you down. Then when they get into the fourth quarter, that's when they finish you off. That's when they end up really taking advantage of teams that don't have great depth and don't have great linebacker play. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals defense, when it comes to stop the run, has been pretty solid all year. During the regular season, they were 6th in rushing yards per game allowed. However, when they played the Las Vegas Raiders last week, the Las Vegas Raiders had 103 total rushing yards, and they were averaging 7.4 yards per attempt. And Josh Jacobs, every time he was toting that rock, like, he was really effective. So you got to wonder just how effective is the Cincinnati Bengals run defense going to be in this game, because Bengal fans are going to reference the stats, but at the same time, when you're facing off against a team like Tennessee, this isn't just your average run-of-the-mill running football team. Like, this is an exotic rushing attack at that. And even when Derrick Henry was out, you still have Dante Foreman who was stepping up. Like, you still had other running backs who were stepping up and carrying the load. So for Cincinnati, you got to make sure that you're able to rotate guys in. You want to make sure that you're able to keep the guys on your front seven as fresh as possible heading into the fourth quarter, because that's when Tennessee starts to really wear teams down. Like, I used to always wonder what announcers and commentators used to mean when they used to say a running back got better as the game progressed. And I used to be like, how does somebody get better as the game progressed? Well, you see this big behemoth of a man, Derrick Henry, you have to tackle him for the first 3 quarters. You get into the fourth quarter, everybody's tired. If a cornerback sees Derrick Henry come to the corner, he's like, oh God, he's not going to want to tackle him. So now, over the last couple of years, I've now started to understand what people mean by a running back gets better throughout the game. So for Cincinnati, they have to make sure that they're able to rotate guys in and they're able to keep guys fresh. And Cincinnati does have pretty good depth when it comes to their defensive line. Another thing that Cincinnati has to do is they have to make sure that they don't turn the football over. So Cincinnati was +2 in turnover differential last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. If they're going to win this game against Tennessee, they're going to have to make sure that they also win the turnover battle, because when you're facing off against a team like Tennessee, a team that has a focal point of running the football, taking care of the ball, and, you know, having the ball for a good duration of the game, you have to make sure that you're able to make the most out of your opportunities, because let's say you get the ball in the first quarter and you go 3 and out. So it's 14 minutes and 20 seconds left. A team like Tennessee, they get the ball, they may have the ball for 8 to maybe 9 minutes, and you may not touch the ball again until late in the first quarter or maybe in the second quarter. So when you're facing off against a team like Tennessee, a team that is really adept at, you know, taking care of the football and taking time off the clock, you cannot afford to have possessions where you don't put any points on the ball or on the board, and on top of that, another thing for Cincinnati is you have to force Tennessee to throw the football. You have to put Tennessee in situations where they need to throw the football because, yes, Ryan Tannehill's a solid quarterback. They do have a really good group of wide receivers, A.J. Brown and whatnot. But at the same time, this is not a team that is built ideally on wanting to throw the football to win games. As a matter of fact, that's when Tennessee has gotten themselves in a lot of trouble this year, is when they've been put in games and they've been put in situations where they have to throw the ball. And even with a healthy A.J. Brown and whatnot, this team still is predicated towards running the football with Derrick Henry. So if you're Cincinnati, you have to get the Tennessee Titans off their game plan. Now, you may not stop Derrick Henry. You may not slow down the Tennessee Titans rushing attack. And I tell people this all the time. It's more than two ways to slow down a team's run game. You can either stop them outright, or you can get up early and force them to have to throw the football a little bit more than what they would like to get back into the game. And on top of that, if you force Tennessee to start throwing the football, then they start playing towards the strength of your defense. With the strength of your defense is your ability to get after the quarterback, because you have a very good group of pass rushers. You got Trey Hendrickson. You have Sam Hubbard. Larry Ogunjobi went down. He was really good this year. He had 7 sacks, so he's not going to return for the remainder of the playoffs. So that's going to be a huge loss for Cincinnati. But you do have a really good pass rush, and your linebackers are pretty solid in coverage as well. So for Cincinnati, if you can put Tennessee in obvious passing situations where they have to throw the football, I think that's definitely something that can tilt towards your advantage. Now, Cincinnati offensively, they had a really dominant performance against the Las Vegas Raiders last week. Joe Burrow was the star of the game. He was 24-34 for 244 passing yards. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And if the Bengals are going to win this game, they are once again going to have to do it behind the arm of Joe Burrow, because Tennessee has the second best run defense in the league. They have a really good defensive line, so it's been really tough to run the ball on Tennessee's defense this year. And Cincinnati didn't really have a lot of success running the football last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. Like, as a matter of fact, they didn't even touch 100 yards rushing. They were averaging 3.3 yards per attempt and had 83 total yards as a team. So the run game probably isn't going to get going in this game. So you're going to have to beat Tennessee by airing the football out, which is going to allude to the offensive line having to have a good performance. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line isn't downright terrible. They don't suck at every position. The left side of their offensive line, especially left tackle Jonah Williams, is really good. Jonah Williams had a phenomenal game last week against Yannick Ngakoue. However, the right side of that offensive line has some problems. You know, right tackle, I don't even know how they went into the playoffs starting whoever they have at right tackle. I don't know if they don't have any better options on the bench, because he got ate up alive by Max Crosby last week. And you look at this Tennessee pass rush, man, like you got Harold Landry, 12 sacks. You got Jonathan Simmons, 8.5 sacks. As a matter of fact, Jonathan Simmons may be one of the top 5 interior defensive linemen that we have in the league right now, behind guys like Aaron Donald and Cam Hayward. Like, he's that good. Not only is he good against the pass, but he's also good when it comes to playing the run as well. Then you got Danico Autry, who has 9 sacks, a career high. So there are a lot of pass rushers on this Tennessee Titans team that's more than capable of being able to get pressure on the quarterback. And not just those guys, but they also have guys sitting on the bench who also can come in and be good rotational piece as situational pass rushers. So Cincinnati, even though their offensive line isn't great, and they could end up being put in second and long situations or third and long situations, they've been able to overcome the inefficiency of their offensive line because they're so good at generating big plays. Like, they could be in a third and long situation and still convert because how talented their wide receiving core is. And you look at Jamar Chase, and I was just talking to a Cincinnati Bengals fan in the comment section of one of my recent videos when we were talking about the Bengals. Like, when Jamar Chase gets the ball in his hands, he kind of changes into a running back. Like, when you think about Jamar Chase, we think about how good he is when it comes to catching contested catches, those 50-50 balls, how good he is in the red zone, how good he is at creating separation on his routes. But also, when that ball is in his hands, like, he's really hard to bring down. Like, Jamar Chase is one of those wide receivers who plays bigger than what he is. Like, going into the combine, I thought he was like 6'3", 6'4". He's only 6 foot even. So he plays like he's 6'6". So he's just so physically dominant. And then on top of that, you got Tyler Boyd, you got T. Higgins, and you look at the Tennessee Titans. Although their defense is really good, they're in the middle of the pack when it comes to yards per pass allowed. They are allowing 6.6 yards per attempt, which is 18th in the league. So you look at Cincinnati, there's definitely an opportunity to be able to take advantage of that secondary, because that secondary has been prone to, giving up a couple of big plays here and there. Now, the Titans are a body blow kind of team. They want to set you up to dominate you in the fourth quarter. They want you going into the fourth quarter gassed. They want you going into the fourth quarter winded. They want you going into the fourth quarter tired and fatigued. Now, they don't care if the score is close going into the fourth quarter, because it doesn't really matter, because if you're exhausted and you're pretty much worn down, they're going to end up wearing you down even more. So it doesn't really matter how close the game is heading into the fourth, because eventually Tennessee is going to end up pulling away. So it's really imperative that Cincinnati gets out to a fast start on offense, which they did a pretty good job of doing that last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. But at the same time, you also got to remember that this is a Cincinnati Bengals team that at times comes out a little bit flat to start games. So you can't get in a situation where you find yourself struggling early and you get down early to Tennessee, because Tennessee is one of the last teams that you want to be down early to, especially if you're looking at that Bengals defense with a question mark of how good are they going to be against Derrick Henry and that run defense. Now, Cincinnati, one thing that they are going to have on their side is the fact that they are so explosive that it's not going to take them long to score. So even if Tennessee is taking a lot of time off the clock and the Bengals defense can't get off the field, as long as the offense can score quickly and their offense isn't going 3 and out and their offense is sustaining drives, that's going to help out their defense. Because when you're going against Derrick Henry and you're going against that Tennessee Titans offense, one thing that's really important and making sure that your defense doesn't get worn out is making sure that your offense is helping out your defense by at least making sure that your defense doesn't have to spend 30 seconds on the bench, and then next thing you know, after they get done passing around that Gatorade bottle, they got to put that helmet on and suit back up to head back on the field. So it's really imperative that Cincinnati's offense is effective and that it is efficient in this game. And on top of that, if Cincinnati can come away with a couple of turnovers here and there and they're able to capitalize off those with those points off of turnovers, that's going to be extremely huge also, because Tennessee isn't really a team that wants to see themselves down. As a matter of fact, if you were to ask me which team would I be more confident in if they were down several possessions going into the fourth quarter, I would head with the Cincinnati Bengals, because the Cincinnati Bengals can score quickly. Meanwhile, you look at the Tennessee Titans, they're not really an offense that's built on, scoring fast and having a lot of big plays downfield unless they establish the run game. So if you're Cincinnati, you don't need to shut down Derrick Henry. You just need to slow him down. And on top of that, this is going to be his first game back in the last couple of months. We haven't seen Derrick Henry play in a minute. So yes, we are going to assume that he's going to return to form and whatnot, but at the same time, we don't know that. You get what I'm saying? So we don't really know how Tennessee's game plan is going to be with Derrick Henry. We know that he's going to get a good workload, but we just don't really know just how much of in-game shape that he is, because the NFL isn't normally just something that, people can just take a break from and then come back the same. It normally is a process, but at the same time, that's your average NFL player. Derrick Henry isn't your average NFL player. Derrick Henry is not human. This guy is a behemoth of a man. This man is a freight train. So one of the most important players that needs to step up for the Cincinnati Bengals in this game is not Joe Burrow. It's not Jamar Chase. It's not Joe Mixon. It's whoever they have playing right tackle. Because if Cincinnati can at least get, better play than what they got last week out of their right tackle position this week against Tennessee, then you really like their chances of being able to win this matchup going against a really good Tennessee defense. Because I don't think that Tennessee's offense is going to run up and down and put points on the board on every single possession against the Cincinnati defense. As a matter of fact, I think that Cincinnati's defense is heavily underrated. I've been saying this all year, especially when you look at how good they are against the pass when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback and how they fared against the run. But at the same time, you don't really know how those linebackers are going to fare in this matchup. So the team I'm going to take to win this game, I am going to take the Cincinnati Bengals with the upset. And the reason why I'm going to take the Bengals with the upset is because of this. The Bengals have been playing some really good football. And you look at Joe Burrow, if he's able to take care of the football and they have no turnovers and their offensive line is at least, formidable, I think that Cincinnati has a very good chance winning this game. And even if their offensive line is giving up a good amount of sacks at the same time and pressures, Cincinnati's offense is more than capable of being able to generate big plays. And that's a large reason why I'm taking Cincinnati, because Tennessee's defense has been prone to give up big plays here and there. And on top of that, you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, who are second in the NFL in yards per pass, 7.9. I think that's definitely a big matchup that can be exploited. And I think that the Tennessee secondary is not bad, but I definitely feel like, it's kind of inflated how good their secondary is because they have such a very good pass rush. And when you have a very good pass rush, your corners don't have to be in coverage for all that long. Now, you do have pretty good safety play. You do have Kevin Byard. We can't forget about him. And also, you look at Cincinnati defensively, I know that they're not going to be able to shut down Derrick Henry, but I do feel like they can do a pretty good job in putting Tennessee in situations that they have to throw the football and capitalize off the Tennessee Titans offensive line, because the Tennessee Titans offensive line hasn't really been the best this year because they've had injuries, and you also had some guys who came down with COVID during the stretch. But at the same time, the Tennessee Titans offensive line isn't built mainly all pass protection. Their offensive line is mainly built towards run blocking. So when you put Tennessee in situations where they had to throw the football, like we've seen several times throughout the season, they have gotten into a lot of trouble. And I believe that the Cincinnati Bengals defense is capable of being able to do that, which is why I'm taking the Bengals with the upset. I think they win this game 27-24 is my final score prediction for this matchup. I'm going to side with the Cincinnati Bengals. So who you got? You got Titans? Why you got Tennessee winning?
Because when Derrick's back, he's out. He's back for just like how last night with Cam Akers came back and was a beast. He's hungry and he got something to prove that he haven't showed all season. So I got Tennessee.
Definitely.